After 3,000 years, humanity returns to avenge Earth's destruction. The stars had watched in silence as the human race was brought to the brink of extinction. Earth, the cradle of their civilization, had burned. Its blue oceans, once teeming with life, had turned to ash. The planet's once vibrant forests and cities were now nothing more than shattered memories. The aliens who had invaded and raised the Earth believed humanity to be no more. But they were wrong. 3,000 years had passed since that fateful day, the day the invaders descended like a storm, unrelenting and unforgiving. They were a conglomerate of various species, each more powerful than the last, all united in their hatred for humanity. Earth fell quickly, its defenses unable to withstand the onslaught. The invaders slaughtered billions and left the planet a ruin. But in the dark corners of space, humanity survived. The survivors had fled to the deepest reaches of the galaxy, hidden on forgotten moons, in asteroid belts, and on derelict space stations. The war, however, had cost them dearly. Many of the old technologies were lost, and the survivors had to rebuild from nothing, living in the shadows of the universe. Yet, throughout the centuries, the seed of vengeance had always remained. They had not forgotten. They had bided their time. And now, after 3,000 years, humanity was ready to return. Captain Avellini Rourke stood at the helm of the Ascendant, the flagship of the new human federation. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, sleek, advanced, and brimming with an unrelenting hunger for revenge. Her crew, a mix of humans and descendants of those who had once called Earth home, were as determined as she was. "We're entering the system, Captain," Lieutenant Malik said, his eyes focused on the star map before him. The alien homeworld loomed on the screen, a glowing mass of swirling gases and ancient cities. The invaders, who had once destroyed Earth, now flourished under the same sun that had watched their victory millennia ago. "We're not just here for justice," Avellini replied, her voice hard as steel. "We're here to make them regret ever thinking they could wipe us out. Prepare the fleet. It's time." With a sharp motion, she turned toward the giant view screen where the alien planet appeared, distant yet so very close. Her fingers curled into a fist. It had taken 3 millennia, but the time for humanity's vengeance had arrived. The first wave of attacks came swiftly. The Human Federation's fleet, numbering hundreds of ships, each a testament to humanity's ingenuity and drive, tore through the enemy's defenses. The invaders, who had long believed that Earth's destruction was an unchallenged victory, were taken completely off guard. They had not anticipated the resilience of humanity. Avellini's voice crackled over the comms as the fleet launched wave after wave of strikes. "For Earth, for every life lost, we will not be silenced." The enemy ships were massive, hulking constructs designed to intimidate. But humanity's ships were small, agile, and deadly. They struck with precision, their weapons tearing through the alien armada like a knife through soft flesh. The Federation's ships were designed not only for war but for survival, cloaking devices, EMP pulses, and advanced AI that could outthink their alien counterparts. Every battle was a statement, every shot was a promise kept. Avellini watched as the alien fleet began to falter. Their soldiers, once so confident, now scrambled in panic as humanity's vengeance rained down. She remembered the images from the old archives, the destruction of Earth, the fires that burned across the sky, the broken cities and the bodies of loved ones left to rot. Her heart hardened. On the surface of the alien world, the invaders began to feel the tremors of their empire crumbling. The first message came in, a plea for peace, for negotiation. Avellini smirked as she read the transmission. Too late for that, she thought. The Federation's fleets descended on the planet's capital, their weapons firing in coordinated fury. Massive space stations were shattered in seconds, cities on the surface razed to the ground. The alien leaders, the ones who had ordered the destruction of Earth, were no longer safe in their grand citadels. They had underestimated humanity's hunger for revenge, and they would pay for it. Avellini descended onto the planet with a squad of elite soldiers, the final blow to the alien leadership about to be delivered. As she entered the grand hall of the alien palace, she saw them, the invaders who had once believed themselves to be gods, cowering before her. Their once mighty empire was crumbling, and they knew it. One of their leaders, a towering being with skin like black marble and eyes like burning stars, stepped forward. His voice was low, trembling with fear and fury. You cannot defeat us, he growled. We are the conquerors of worlds. Your vengeance means nothing. Avellini's eyes burned with the fire of her ancestors. You destroyed my home. You killed my people. But you forgot one thing. Humanity does not die. We only grow stronger. Your empire ends today. With a single motion, she pressed the button that sent the signal, launching the final sequence. The palace shook as the last of the invaders' strongholds collapsed around them. The invaders screamed in desperation as the world they had built began to fall apart. And then, it was done. As Avellini stood among the ruins of the alien citadel, watching the smoke rise into the dark sky, she felt a deep sense of closure. Humanity had returned to avenge Earth, and their vengeance had been sweet. We're not just survivors, she whispered, staring at the horizon. We are humanity, and we will never be forgotten. In the distance, a fleet of human ships hovered, watching over the fallen world. The war was over, but humanity's legacy had only just begun. Aftermath, the rise of humanity. The invasion was over. The galaxy now knew that humanity had returned, not just to survive, but to reclaim its place among the stars. Yet the aftermath was as complex as the war itself. The destruction of the alien empire had created a power vacuum in the galaxy. The Federation had become the de facto power in the region, but they had no illusions about the consequences of their actions. They had won a battle, but the war for peace, for unity, was just beginning. The Council of Species. Avellini Rourke stood before the newly formed Council of Species, a collection of different alien races who had once allied with the invaders or stood by as Earth was destroyed. Now, they were forced to sit at the table of diplomacy with the very species they had nearly exterminated. The tables had turned, but the weight of responsibility was heavy. I stand here not as a conqueror, Avellini began, her voice firm but tempered with the understanding that this was the beginning of a new era, but as a representative of humanity. We did not seek war. We sought justice for our fallen world, but now that we have it, we are ready to rebuild, not just for ourselves, but for the galaxy. Her words echoed through the council chamber, where representatives from dozens of species, some familiar, some unrecognizable, watched her carefully. The damage humanity had wrought was immense, but there was a deeper truth that hung in the air. Humanity had won, and with that victory came power, responsibility, and the opportunity to shape the future. You cannot expect us to forgive the atrocities you committed, one of the council members, a reptilian being with scales like obsidian, hissed. Your vengeance was swift and brutal. How can we trust you now? Avellini met the reptilian's gaze, unflinching. Trust is earned, not given, she said. But let me make something clear. We are not here to conquer. We are here to ensure that what happened to Earth never happens to any other world again. Another council member, a small insectoid creature with iridescent wings, raised its multiple arms. Then what of our worlds? Your federation is no different from the ones you destroyed. You came to us as destroyers. What guarantee do we have that you won't turn on us? The room fell silent as Avellini processed the question. She knew that her people had fought for a purpose, but now they had to prove that purpose was not rooted in vengeance alone. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity had learned from the past. We offer peace, she said firmly. We offer protection and a chance to rebuild, not just for humanity, but for all races. We will not impose ourselves on anyone, but we will defend the freedom of all who wish to live without the threat of tyranny. Her words rippled through the council, causing murmurs and debates among the representatives. There was a long, tense silence before the reptilian council member spoke again. You speak of peace, but how can we trust that humanity won't fall into the same pitfalls that destroyed Earth in the first place? We will be different, Avellini said, her voice resolute. We will honor the lessons of the past and build a future where no race is subjugated. Humanity will not become the next empire, but we will stand ready, united, and strong, to defend against those who seek to destroy us. The dawn of a new age. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, a fragile peace began to form. Humanity, once a scattered remnant, now stood as a beacon of strength, not through fear, but through its commitment to ensuring that Earth's tragedy would never be repeated. The Federation, with Avellini at its helm, became a symbol of resilience and growth. Meanwhile, scattered across the galaxy, humanity's story was being told, broadcasted in every corner of the known universe. No longer were they a defeated species. The memory of their downfall, a sad tale of loss. Now, their story was one of triumph, of overcoming impossible odds. The Federation, under Avellini's leadership, began to heal old wounds and make alliances with species who had once considered them enemies. And, more than that, humanity's military might, born of a need to avenge the past, was restructured into something more, a force of peacekeeping, one that not only sought to defend but to rebuild and protect. New colonies were established, some on distant moons, others on planets that had once been targets of alien forces. Earth was a memory, but its legacy lived on in every human endeavor. The search for unity. But not everyone agreed with the new direction humanity was taking. A faction within the Federation, the Hawk Coalition, arose. They believed that humanity had been too soft, too willing to forgive the galaxy's enemies. They felt that the Federation should seek dominance over the galaxy, to ensure that no one would ever again threaten humanity's survival. These Hawks were led by General Corin Blackwood, a man who had seen the destruction of Earth firsthand and believed that humanity could never afford to be weak again. "We were nearly destroyed," General Blackwood argued to a gathering of military leaders. "Do you really think that peace will last? There are those out there, waiting, plotting our downfall. We must be ready to take control, to make them submit before they destroy us again." Blackwood's words resonated with many, particularly the veterans who had fought in the war to avenge Earth. They feared that without a strong hand to control the galaxy, humanity would fall prey to the same forces that had nearly wiped them out. A new challenge. As the Federation continued to rebuild, word arrived of a new threat, a shadowy force from the edge of the galaxy, one that had heard of humanity's resurgence and feared what they might become. These unknown invaders, known only as the Eclipsed, had been watching from the darkness, waiting for the right moment to strike. But this time, humanity was ready. Avellini Rourke stood once again at the helm of the Ascendant, her eyes focused on the distant stars. Her hand hovered over the tactical display, ready for the next challenge. But she knew this time, it wasn't just about vengeance, it was about something greater, ensuring that Earth's destruction would never be forgotten, but that humanity would never be defined by it. The galaxy might tremble, but humanity would rise, stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before. This was only the beginning. To be continued. The Eclipsed, a new battle for humanity's future. Humanity had barely caught its breath from the War of Vengeance when the first signs of the Eclipsed emerged. They were a race of shadowy figures, their ships cloaked in the darkest of voids, their intentions as obscure as the cold depths of space. They had watched the galaxy for millennia, but now, they saw a new threat rising in the form of humanity, resilient, powerful, and unyielding. The Eclipsed had spent centuries in isolation, biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. But humanity had no intention of letting that moment come. The first encounter. It was a routine mission, or so it seemed. The Ascendant had been patrolling the outer rim of the Federation, a region dotted with ancient ruins and abandoned star systems. Avellini Rourke and her crew had encountered strange anomalies before, distortions in spacetime, unusual energy signatures, but nothing that had ever posed a true threat. That was until they received an unmarked transmission. The message was cryptic and chilling. "You have awakened us. Now, you must pay the price." Before they could trace the source, an entire fleet of dark ships appeared, seemingly from nowhere. Their hulls were covered in jagged black plating, designed to absorb all light, making them invisible to the naked eye unless one was incredibly close. The ship's weapons crackled with energy, and their presence seemed to distort the fabric of space around them. "We're not alone," Avellini muttered under her breath. Her mind raced as the realization dawned on her, the Eclipsed had arrived. The first volley of plasma shots hit the Ascendant, shaking the ship violently. The hull groaned under the assault, but it held firm. This was a new kind of enemy, one that couldn't be fought with conventional tactics. "Damage report," Avellini ordered. "Shields at 40%, Captain," Lieutenant Malik responded, his voice tight with urgency. "They're using weapons we've never encountered before. We need to fall back and regroup." But Avellini wasn't ready to retreat. She'd faced annihilation before, and she wasn't about to run from this new threat. "No," she said firmly, "we stand our ground. We fight." The crew of the Ascendant moved quickly, executing evasive maneuvers. activating their advanced cloaking technology and deploying countermeasures. But the eclipsed ships were unlike anything they'd encountered. Their weapons didn't just damage the ship. They seemed to tear at the very space around them, distorting time and gravity. The Federation fleet had no answers to these new weapons. The rise of the Hawk Coalition. Back on the Federation capital, tensions were rising. The victory over the invaders had left humanity emboldened. But now a new enemy was threatening their survival. The Hawk Coalition, led by General Corin Blackwood, had grown in power during the rebuilding years, and their influence was steadily rising. Blackwood was a man who understood war. He had seen the devastation humanity had endured, and he believed that the only way to ensure survival was through total dominance. His belief was simple: the galaxy had already proven that humanity could not afford peace without being attacked. They had to strike first, before the galaxy could strike again. "We cannot afford to show weakness," General Blackwood shouted during a tense council meeting, his fist slamming onto the table. "We are facing an enemy unlike any we've known, and if we don't take the fight to them, we will fall, just like Earth did." Avellini was there, watching the general with a mixture of concern and determination. She knew Blackwood's words would resonate with the more aggressive factions in the Federation, but she also understood the importance of diplomacy. Humanity could not afford to become the aggressors in a galaxy that had already been scarred by war. "We will not survive if we succumb to the same rage that destroyed Earth," Avellini countered, standing up to face the room. "The Eclipsed are not like the invaders. We don't know their motivations, their weaknesses. If we strike blindly, we risk becoming the very thing we fought against." But Blackwood wasn't ready to listen. "You talk of peace, but we both know what it leads to. You saw what happened when we didn't act quickly enough against the invaders. The galaxy doesn't want peace, they want to see us burn. They will destroy us the moment we show any sign of weakness." The room erupted into argument as the two sides clashed. Avellini's voice, calm and rational, tried to steer the conversation toward a diplomatic solution, while Blackwood's faction pushed for an aggressive stance. But as the debate wore on, it became clear that the Federation was divided. And as the war with the Eclipsed escalated, that division would become humanity's greatest challenge. The Eclipsed revealed themselves. As the Ascendant and the Federation fleet fought to push back the Eclipsed forces, the enemy made their presence felt in ways far more subtle and sinister than anticipated. Rather than sending waves of ships to attack in conventional warfare, the Eclipsed began to infiltrate. Their presence unseen but deeply felt, entire colonies vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but empty cities and the faint echoes of terror. In deep space, alien ships, some of them once allies of the invaders, began to fall silent. The Eclipsed were not just attacking, they were erasing entire civilizations from existence, as though their very presence could erase entire histories. When the first ship came into contact with the Eclipsed in person, it was not a battle fought with firepower, but with a mental intrusion. Crew members of a Federation vessel began to act erratically, their minds fractured by psychic waves sent from the Eclipsed ships. The fleet had to abandon the mission, retreating as the mental onslaught continued. "They're not just invaders, they're mind warpers, manipulating our very thoughts," Avellini realized, horrified. The war had changed. Now, it wasn't just about physical strength or military power. The Eclipsed were using psychological warfare, destabilizing entire fleets and colonies without firing a single shot. A deadly choice. As humanity's forces struggled to adapt to this new threat, the Federation was left with a difficult decision: continue to fight against the Eclipsed with the hope of victory, or give in to the pressure from the Hawk Coalition and wage a brutal, preemptive strike across the galaxy. The Council was divided. Avellini knew that if humanity did not act wisely, they would be trapped in an endless cycle of violence. But Blackwood and his faction were insistent. "We need to go on the offensive now," Blackwood thundered. "They will not stop until we are all dead or enslaved. It's either us or them." Avellini met Blackwood's gaze with unwavering resolve. She understood his pain, his need for retribution, but she also understood the dangers of becoming the very thing they had fought so hard to defeat. "We will fight." "Yes," she said, "but we will do it on our terms. We will find a way to defeat the Eclipsed, not by becoming monsters, but by becoming something stronger, by becoming the galaxy's protectors, not its conquerors." The final battle was fast approaching. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Would humanity survive by learning from its past, or would it repeat the same mistakes and fall victim to its own rage? The war for the future had just begun. To be continued. The Unseen War, Humanity's Stand Against the Eclipsed. The galaxy had always been a place of chaos, but now, with the arrival of the Eclipsed, that chaos had reached a fever pitch. Humanity, still rebuilding after the devastating invasion that destroyed Earth, was caught in the crossfire of a war they had not provoked. The Eclipsed were unlike anything they had faced before, an unseen, shadowy force that tore at the fabric of the universe itself, manipulating minds and erasing civilizations from existence without warning. It was a war fought not just with ships and weapons, but with the very essence of thought, fear, and control. And as the Federation continued to fracture under the strain of these new enemies, humanity's resolve would be tested like never before. The Edge of Darkness. Captain Avellini Rourke stood at the bridge of the Ascendant, staring at the star map before her. The Federation fleet had been engaged in a constant cat-and-mouse game with the Eclipsed forces. Their ships, as dark as the void of space, never seemed to follow conventional battle strategies. The Eclipsed struck swiftly, disappeared into shadow, and then, just as quickly, vanished. The worst part wasn't the destruction they caused or the battles they fought. It was the psychological toll they were taking on humanity's forces. Soldiers and crewmen across the Federation had started reporting nightmares, strange hallucinations, and sudden fits of paranoia. Minds were breaking under the invisible pressure of the Eclipsed. "We've lost contact with 3 more colonies," Captain Lieutenant Malik reported, his face pale. "The Eclipsed are getting bolder." Avellini clenched her fists. Her mind was racing. How do you fight something you can't see, can't touch? How do you strike an enemy that attacks your very sanity? "We're going to need more than firepower to stop this," she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. She looked up, meeting Malik's eyes. "We need a strategy, and I don't care how impossible it seems. We're not going to let them erase humanity again." Malik nodded grimly. "Any ideas?" Avellini's gaze fell to the distant star system on the map, a region of space that had once been a hotbed of trade and prosperity, now silent, abandoned. "We're going to take the fight to them. We find where they're hiding, we flush them out, and we confront them. It's time to bring this war into the light." The Eclipsed counterattack. The Eclipsed, as it turned out, weren't content with merely erasing civilizations from existence. As the Ascendant and the Federation's fleet ventured deeper into Eclipsed-controlled space, they began to uncover the true nature of their enemies. The Eclipsed were a race, or perhaps an amalgamation of different beings, who had existed in the void of space long before the first stars had even been born. They were beings of shadow and thought, existing as a collective consciousness that fed off the fear and confusion of others. They were not just invaders, they were predators, and the galaxy itself was their prey. And worse, they could manipulate time and space in ways humanity had never imagined. As the Ascendant made its way to an abandoned colony on the edge of the Eclipsed zone, they were ambushed by a wave of psychic energy so intense that it caused the ship to shudder, as if the very air itself had become charged with malevolent intent. "Brace for impact," Avellini shouted as the lights flickered, and the walls groaned. She could hear the crew yelling and scrambling to hold their ground, but something else was at play. Inside her mind, images began to flash, visions of Earth's destruction, faces of loved ones long lost, horrific scenes from the past she thought she had buried. The Eclipsed had breached their defenses in the only way they knew how, through the mind. The bridge was plunged into chaos as crew members fell to their knees, clutching their heads in agony. "Captain," Malik shouted through the comms, his voice strained, "they're getting into our heads. We can't stop it." Avellini gritted her teeth, fighting to stay focused as her own mind began to fracture under the weight of the psychic assault. "Everyone, hold on. Fight it. Focus on something real." Avellini's mind drifted to Earth, specifically. The memories of her father, the man who had taught her how to fight, how to survive. She remembered his face, his voice, steady and calm in the face of every storm. "Focus on what we're fighting for," she muttered, a mantra for herself as much as for the crew. "We are humanity, and we will not fall." With a force of will, she pushed through the mental fog. Slowly, the hallucinations began to fade, and the ship stabilized. The crew, shaken but resolute, slowly recovered. But Avellini knew one thing: the Eclipsed weren't just attacking them with weapons, they were attacking the very core of their being. And if humanity didn't learn how to fight back against this unseen force, they would lose the war before it even truly began. The turning point. It wasn't long before the Federation's top scientists and military strategists came to a chilling conclusion: the Eclipsed weren't just another invading force, they were a force of nature, a collective consciousness that had existed for eons, manipulating the very fabric of space and time. Avellini's mission was clear. The Ascendant would go deeper into Eclipsed territory than any ship had gone before, with one goal: find the source of the Eclipsed's power and shut it down. But doing so would be perilous, as the Eclipsed would be waiting for them at every turn, their ships more insidious than ever, their attacks more devastating. But it wasn't just the ships and the psychic assaults that made the mission impossible, it was the knowledge that the Federation was fractured. General Corin Blackwood and his Hawk Coalition were becoming more vocal in their push for a full-scale, aggressive war. The tensions between the more moderate members of the Federation and the Hawks were escalating. Some wanted to take the fight to the Eclipsed. Others still believed humanity should be more cautious. If we can't defeat them with strength, we defeat them with unity, Avellini said, speaking to the Federation Council as she prepared for her next mission. We cannot allow our fear to tear us apart. If we don't stay united, we won't survive the coming storm. It was a hard sell. Blackwood's faction had grown strong, and their influence in the Federation military was undeniable. He argued that they needed to attack before the Eclipsed could strike again. But Avellini knew that if they acted impulsively, they risked becoming just another destructive force in the galaxy. If we do this, we do it right, Avellini insisted. We will uncover their weaknesses and exploit them. We will fight, yes, but we will also think together. The final push. As the Ascendant entered the heart of Eclipsed space, Avellini's crew braced for what was to come. They had uncovered a disturbing truth: the Eclipsed weren't just hiding in the shadows, they were the shadows. The Federation had built a device, a prototype using the most advanced human tech that could disrupt the Eclipsed's psychic influence. If it worked, it would sever the connection the Eclipsed had to their vast collective consciousness, rendering them vulnerable. But as the Federation fleet pushed into the heart of Eclipsed space, a devastating realization dawned on them. The Eclipsed were not just a race, they were a living, breathing part of the universe's fabric, and in severing their connection, humanity risked tearing apart the very structure of space itself. It was a terrifying choice: fight the Eclipsed and risk destabilizing the galaxy, or retreat and allow them to continue their unseen war. But Avellini knew there was no turning back. Let's finish this, she said, locking eyes with her crew. For Earth, for all of us. To be continued. The final decision: humanity's sacrifice. As the Ascendant ventured deeper into the heart of Eclipsed space, the weight of their mission became suffocating. The vast emptiness of space seemed even more oppressive now, with the knowledge that they were walking on the edge of the unknown. Their mission was clear: to find the core of the Eclipsed psychic network and shut it down. But doing so meant more than just defeating an enemy, it meant potentially undoing the very fabric of the galaxy itself. The Federation's scientists had created a device that could sever the Eclipsed from the collective consciousness that bound them together. The weapon, however, was untested and carried significant risks. It wasn't just a tool of destruction, it was a gamble, a last-ditch effort that could either save or destroy everything they had fought for. If it worked, the Eclipsed would be crippled, vulnerable. If it failed, the galaxy might fracture beyond repair. But Avellini knew one thing above all: this was humanity's fight. Earth's destruction, the fall of their world, had not been for nothing. Humanity had learned from their past mistakes: brutality, vengeance, and unchecked power had almost doomed them. This time, it would be about balance, unity, and a willingness to make the hardest choices. The heart of the Eclipsed. As the Ascendant entered the heart of Eclipsed space, it was as though the ship itself began to feel different. The walls, once a reassuring metal barrier, now seemed oppressive and cold, as though the ship had become part of the void itself. The crew reported strange fluctuations in the ship's systems, spontaneous power surges, distortions in communications, and worst of all, the presence of the Eclipsed could be felt in every room. It wasn't just an assault on their senses, it was an assault on their souls. "Captain," We're entering the eclipsed nexus, Lieutenant Malik reported, his voice tight. We can't get a clear reading of the space around us. It's like the stars themselves are fading away. Avellini's gaze remained fixed on the screen ahead. The darkness was not just the absence of light, it felt like an oppressive presence, an unnatural, suffocating force. This was the core of the eclipsed, where they drew their strength, where their collective consciousness originated. We push forward, Avellini said, voice unwavering. This is the only way we end this. As they advanced, the eclipsed ships began to appear, silent, sleek vessels that seemed to move without any conventional propulsion. Their presence was a constant disturbance, as though they were bending the very laws of physics to their will. Then came the psychic assault. The crew of the Ascendant staggered under the weight of the barrage. The ship's hull groaned as psychic waves slammed into it like physical blows. Avellini's mind reeled with nightmarish images, visions of Earth's destruction twisted into new horrors, visions of a future where humanity was enslaved, where their memories were erased and their existence forgotten. But Avellini fought to stay focused. Deploy the device, she ordered, her voice steady. Malik and the science officer, Dr. Lyra Silas, worked frantically to activate the Federation's experimental weapon. The device was a sophisticated construct that could send out a pulse powerful enough to disrupt the eclipsed's collective consciousness. But the longer they waited, the more powerful the psychic assault became. Almost there, Captain, Dr. Silas reported, her voice strained. It's taking longer than expected. We need more time. Time is a luxury we don't have, Avellini replied, her hands gripping the armrests of her command chair. They're pushing us to the edge. We have to act now. The final push. Just as Dr. Silas was about to activate the device, a new voice echoed in Avellini's mind, cold, distant, but undeniably clear. You cannot win. You are nothing. We are everything. It was a psychic intrusion, a direct attack on her mind. She saw the face of an eclipsed leader, dark, faceless, as if it had no real form. It spoke, but not in words, just a feeling. A cold, all-encompassing dread. You are trapped. You cannot escape. We are the void. Avellini's heart raced. She could feel her mind slipping, her thoughts beginning to blur under the psychic assault. She was losing her grip on reality. But there was something she had learned in her years of struggle. Fear was the enemy, and the only way to fight fear was to face it head-on. No, she thought fiercely, blocking out the eclipsed voice. I am humanity. I will not fall. She focused, concentrating on the core of her being, the strength of every memory, every victory, every piece of humanity's story. She thought of Earth, its beauty, its chaos, its triumphs and its flaws, and she thought of the future, of all the worlds that would be rebuilt, of all the people who would live to see another day because of the sacrifices made. Now, Avellini shouted. With a trembling hand, Dr. Silas pressed the final button. A pulse of energy, bright and fierce, erupted from the device. The ship vibrated under the intense force as it spread outward, flooding the eclipsed nexus with a wave of disruption. It was as if the very fabric of the universe around them bent and screamed under the pressure of the pulse. For a moment, there was silence, complete, suffocating silence. Then, the eclipsed retaliated. Their ships, once silent and omnipotent, now screeched as if in pain. The psychic assault doubled in intensity, the strain almost too much for the Federation crew to bear. But they held firm, each person clinging to their own reality, their own identity. Avellini could feel the eclipsed presence faltering. Their collective consciousness, the link that held them together, was beginning to unravel. The eclipsed leader's voice echoed one last time in her mind, now laced with desperation. You cannot destroy us. We are infinite. But Avellini knew this was a lie. They had been powerful, yes, but they were not invincible. Humanity had learned that lesson the hard way, and now, humanity was the one standing strong. As the pulse reached its peak, the eclipsed ships began to disintegrate. The dark void that had once swallowed the galaxy began to fracture, like cracks spreading across glass. The once invulnerable force was now crumbling, piece by piece. Avellini exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. We did it, she whispered. The price of victory. But as the final remnants of the eclipsed ships evaporated into the void, Avellini realized that victory had come at a cost. The Federation fleet was battered, the crews exhausted, and the galaxy, though saved, would bear the scars of this war for generations to come. The device had worked, but it had come at a price. The pulse had disrupted not just the eclipsed, but the fabric of space itself. Distortions in time and space were spreading throughout the galaxy. Entire star systems were blinking in and out of existence, reality itself bending under the strain. Avellini looked at the star chart. The galaxy was not whole. The damage was irreversible. "We'll fix it," Avellini said, her voice determined. "We've saved the galaxy, and now we will rebuild it." As the Ascendant limped back toward Federation space, the crew's spirits were lifted by the knowledge that they had won. The war was over. The eclipsed were no more. But the true work was just beginning. Humanity had not only defeated an enemy, they had proven to themselves that they were capable of facing the darkness and surviving it. The future was theirs to build. And humanity, stronger than ever before, would not let it slip away. To be continued. The rebirth of the galaxy, humanity's new dawn. The universe was scarred, and though the immediate threat of the eclipsed had been vanquished, the echoes of their presence lingered in the stars. The galaxy, once again plunged into a fragile peace, now faced the challenge of recovery. Space was no longer just the canvas for exploration, it was a battlefield. Its silence now broken by the deep, lingering consequences of a war that threatened to tear apart everything. Humanity, having sacrificed so much to ensure the eclipsed would never rise again, found itself at the center of a new mission, rebuilding the galaxy. The aftermath. Back at Federation Command, the gravity of the situation hit all at once. The device that had so decisively struck the eclipsed had worked. Yes, but its aftermath was undeniable. Entire star systems had become unstable. Some planets had slipped from the timelines entirely, vanishing like a forgotten dream. Others were now trapped in pockets of time, existing in multiple realities at once. The Federation fleet had returned to their home sectors in tatters, not all ships making it back. The personnel had survived the war, but the mental toll had left its marks. Even those who had been strong in body were fragile in mind. Avellini stood in the war room, staring at the flickering map of the galaxy. It was not the map she had hoped to see, clear, clean, and hopeful, but one that bore the marks of the past. Each planet, each system, now carried scars, some more severe than others. The eclipsed might have been defeated, but the war for the galaxy was far from over. They had only just begun the journey of undoing the damage. "Captain Rourke, we need to discuss the steps forward." General Corin Blackwood's voice broke the silence. He stood with his arms crossed, his eyes steely, as if the horrors they'd witnessed had yet to leave him. Avellini had fought alongside him, but her trust in his methods had waned. The Hawk Coalition, though effective in war, was too quick to resolve to destruction, too quick to take drastic action. She knew that the Federation would need a delicate hand now more than ever. "I understand, General," Avellini said quietly, her voice betraying the weight of her thoughts. "We need to focus on stabilization first. If we're going to rebuild, it has to start with diplomacy and cooperation, not violence." Blackwood's gaze hardened. "You know, Captain, I've fought this war. I've seen what the galaxy is capable of. If we don't act with strength, if we don't make clear that humanity will never be broken, we'll be back to square one within the year. The eclipsed are gone, but we've seen what kind of power exists in this galaxy. We need to dominate, not just survive." Avellini stood firm, her gaze meeting his. "We can rebuild, but we can't dominate. If we do that, we're no better than the eclipsed. We stand for something more than power, we stand for unity. I believe that, even after all this, the galaxy is capable of more than war." New alliances. Days turned into weeks, and the Federation began its new mission. The Ascendant was once again dispatched, but this time not for war. Their mission was one of peace, of restoration. The fleet would travel to the most devastated systems, aiding those in need and using technology to repair the damage that the eclipsed had left behind. Avellini stood on the bridge of the Ascendant, watching as the stars moved by in their majestic, endless dance. It wasn't the peace she had imagined. There was too much to repair, too much to reconcile, but it was a step toward something better. "We've found another destabilized system, Captain." Lieutenant Malik's voice was calm, but there was still a hint of worry. The ripple from the eclipsed pulse has caused massive gravitational anomalies. One of the planets is about to go supernova. Avellini's heart sank. Can we stop it? We're working on a plan, but it'll be close. The gravity distortion is too much for any of our ships to navigate safely. It wasn't just the physical destruction that haunted the galaxy, it was the constant race against time. The desperate effort to save as much as they could. They had won the war, but the rebuilding process was harder than anything Avellini had ever faced. With every new system they visited, it became clear the galaxy was fractured. Even the stars themselves seemed to mourn the loss of the unity that once existed. As the Ascendant rushed toward the dying system, Avellini met with Dr. Lyra Silas. The brilliant scientist had been instrumental in helping create the pulse that had neutralized the eclipsed. But now, she was working tirelessly to find a way to reverse the damage. The damage is even worse than we anticipated, Dr. Silas said as she looked over the latest data. These anomalies are spreading faster than we can fix them. It's almost like the entire fabric of space is starting to unravel. Avellini nodded. We need to act now, before it's too late. Let's get to work. A revelation from the past. As they prepared for the delicate mission to stabilize the system, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A long-forgotten transmission had surfaced from the remnants of an ancient civilization, a race that had once occupied the galaxy long before humanity ever set foot on the stars. The transmission hinted at a lost technology, a device that could repair the fabric of space itself, stabilizing the rifts created by the eclipsed pulse. The technology was buried deep in a system now controlled by a powerful cartel of mercenaries, one that had seized the chaos caused by the eclipse to further their own agendas. Avellini wasn't sure if it was fate or pure luck, but she knew they had no choice but to seek out this relic of the past. If they didn't, the galaxy would never recover. There was no turning back now. We're going to need more than just the Federation for this, Avellini said, her voice resolute. Let's make sure we're ready for anything. The dark market. The Ascendant slipped into the fringe of a sector known as the Black Market, a den of chaos where smugglers, mercenaries, and criminals thrived in the aftermath of the war. The people here lived on the edge, carving out a life in the shadows of the galaxy's larger powers. Avellini had prepared herself for this. She had seen the worst of humanity, and now it was time to face it head-on. The Federation's traditional methods wouldn't work here. They needed an edge, a willingness to navigate the fine line between diplomacy and force. As the Ascendant docked at a massive space station on the outskirts of the Black Market, Avellini and her team stepped into a world where the rules didn't apply. Stay alert, she warned. Trust no one. This is a place where desperation reigns. They were met by a contact, a former Federation operative turned mercenary. His name was Soren Hale, a man with a reputation for getting things done, but at a steep price. I've heard about the Federation's little quest, Soren said, his voice low and gravelly. But you're in the wrong place if you're looking for charity. Avellini stood firm. We're not here to bargain for scraps. We need the technology that will save this galaxy. Soren's eyes flickered with something, curiosity, perhaps, but there was no trust in them. It's not that simple. Nothing's free. Not anymore. A dangerous path. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse, as the Ascendant ventured further into the heart of the Black Market, navigating treacherous alliances and uncovering secrets long buried by the galaxy's most dangerous players. They would find the lost technology, but it wouldn't come without a price. The Federation would need to decide how far they were willing to go to save the galaxy. Would they hold fast to their ideals of peace, or would they be forced to make a choice that would change the course of history forever?